you are witnessing on the screen is an air battle between two sworn enemies, Iran and Israel. They used to be friends, shared the same views and supported each other's existence. But ironically, the two countries are now locked in a war that can only end when one of them collapses. It can be said that the feud between Iran and Israel is one of the most complicated conflicts in the Middle East. But why? Nowadays, whenever mentioning the feud between Iran and Israel, people often immediately think of the two names Ali Khamenei and Benjamin Netanyahu. Ali Khamenei is the supreme leader of Iran, who holds full power over military, religion and foreign policy. He is always steadfast in the ideal of building a pure Islamic state against Western powers and Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu is the longest-serving prime minister in Israel's history, famous for his tough stance, especially when confronting Iran. He always pursues the goal of protecting an independent, modern and internationally recognized Jewish nation. For more than 30 years, they have not had a dialogue, but they are not the ones who started this feud. Let's go back to 1950, when the two countries were still friends, to find out the root of the problem. Iran was then a monarchy led by the Shah, but still had the position of prime minister. The Shah was pro-Western, but Prime Minister Mohammed Said was not, while the people trusted the prime minister more. So Iran was under great pressure from the movement to overthrow the Shah, and was an anti-Western wave from within. Israel had just been established. Both felt surrounded by Arab nationalism, a movement led by Egypt calling for the unity of the Arab world, and against all outside forces, especially Israel. For Iran, this movement directly threatened their regional role and relations with the West, while also inciting an anti-Shah movement within the country. As for Israel, they were considered a foreign product that needed to be destroyed. So although Iran voted against the plan to partition Palestine in 1947, in 1950 they were the second Muslim country to recognize the existence of Israel in reality. That decision was not based on emotion but on calculation. The Shah needed an ally in the Middle East to balance the increasingly extremist Arab countries. In 1953, a major turning point took place when Prime Minister Mohammed Said wanted to nationalize the oil industry. The West, especially Britain and the United States, considered it a threat to their interests. The CIA and MI6 coordinated a coup to overthrow Mohammed Said and bring the Shah back to power. Immediately after that, Iran leaned towards the West and became a strategic ally of Israel. Iran sold oil to Israel. The Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline was built to transport oil from Iran through the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, avoiding the Suez Canal controlled by Egypt. In return, Israel helped Iran establish the Soviet Secret Service. The two sides exchanged technology, weapons, experts and even cooperated to develop missiles in a secret project. It can be said that this was the golden age of this couple, but it only lasted less than 3 decades. Being too close to the West caused shock to many Iranians, especially the clergy and conservatives. That's why they sparked the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Under pressure from nationwide protests, the Shah had to leave the country. Just a few weeks later, the exiled Islamic leader Khamenei returned to the welcome of millions of Iranians. Immediately, Khamenei not only established a theocratic state, but also completely reversed foreign policy. To him, Israel is a devil under the sway of the great American power, an embodiment of empire, of injustice, of invaders. Khamenei even publicly supported the dozens of Iranian students who stormed the American embassy in Tehran in November 1979 and kidnapped 52 officials as hostages for 440 days. The incident put an end to the relationship between Iran and the West. What had been built in 30 years was wiped out in just a few months. Since 1979, this hatred has never subsided. Iran does not directly fight Israel, but supports forces such as Hezbollah in Lebanon or Hamas in Gaza. In return, Israel conducts airstrikes on Iran's targets in Syria, assassinates nuclear scientists and attacks Iran's network systems. The two countries are in a Cold War. So what has pushed these two countries to such a deep level of hostility? Since 1979, the two countries no longer speak to each other in the language of common interests, but in the language of beliefs and ideology, which is the most difficult root of the Israel-Iran feud. It makes both sides not accept the existence of the other on the world map. Just like the US and the Soviet Union in the Cold War, Iran and Israel now both want to spread their values throughout the Middle East. Under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini, and later Ali Khamenei, Iran wants the whole region to follow his example and carry out the Islamic Revolution. From Tehran's perspective, Israel is not seen as a normal country, but as the embodiment of degeneration, occupation, and decadence. Because they always consider Israel as an artificial country, planted by the West in the sacred land of Palestine, to divide and control the Muslim world. Located right in the heart of the Arab countries, Israel also plays the role of a military and intelligence base of the US in the region, not to mention Jerusalem is a sacred place for Islam. According to the Shia sect and the interpretations of the Islamic Revolution, Israel's control of Jerusalem is an insult. Khomeini once said this about Israel's Zionism: "This is essentially a tool of the US and the West to dominate the Middle East." Therefore, confronting Israel is not only to protect Islamic values and the Holy Land of the Middle East, but also to overthrow the entire system of power that the US has installed in this region. Any attempt to normalize relations with Israel will be seen as a betrayal of the revolutionary legacy. On the contrary, the Israeli Prime Minister is someone who does not accept any illusions of the Iranian government. In the eyes of Ali Khamenei, he is not a traditional leader, but the operator of a destructive theocratic system. They do not see Iran as simply a hostile country, but as an existential threat to the existence of the Jewish people. Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly stated that if Iran under the leadership of the Shia clergy were to acquire nuclear weapons, it would be tantamount to placing a sword on the neck of the Israeli people. For him, the memory and history of the persecution of the Jewish people is a reminder that Israel must never underestimate the destructive threats. Netanyahu has never believed in regime change in Iran, and he believes that a theocratic ideology can be contained by treaties. For Netanyahu, Zionism is a national liberation movement aimed at building a safe homeland for the Jews after thousands of years of exile. In the Torah, the land of Canaan is the promised land that God gave to the Jews. For them, Canaan is a sacred land, and establishing a separate nation for the Jews is also the only way to protect this nation. In Netanyahu's eyes, Iran with its extremist beliefs and Islam is threatening to destroy all the efforts of the Jews and the sacred promise that God left in the Torah. And when one side sees the other side's existence as an existential threat, all negotiations become meaningless. In addition to ideology, Iran and Israel are also bound in endless geopolitical competition. Under Ali Khamenei, Iran built an axis of resistance, along with other armed branches throughout the Middle East. For Iran, this is a way to expand its regional influence, assert its role as a Shia Islamic power, while directly competing with Sunni Islamic countries led by Arab countries. This also helps Iran create a belt of military and ideological influence surrounding Israel. The axis of resistance is a tool for Iran to deter the US and Israel without direct confrontation. In the eyes of Iran's leaders, supporting the resistance forces is not only a religious duty to fight injustice, but also a way to spread the spirit of Islam throughout the Muslim world, which Netanyahu calls the Ark of Fire. So he, himself, is restless. He understands that while Iran is reaching out to influence through Shia armed groups, Israel also needs to build a counterweight network. But instead of supporting armed groups, Israel chooses to link up with Sunni Muslim countries, because they also feel the threat from an Iran that is approaching the threshold of possessing nuclear weapons. Under the mediation of the United States, Israel and the Sunni Muslim countries reached the Abraham Agreement to normalize diplomatic relations. Although on the surface it was economic and diplomatic cooperation, in essence this agreement reflected a deeper strategic calculation, which was to isolate Iran by bringing Israel and the Sunni Muslim countries closer together. For Israel, normalizing relations with the Sunni countries was not only a political victory, but also a strategic step in forming a regional front against Tehran's ambitions. In Ali Khamenei's eyes, the Abraham Accords were nothing more than a betrayal of the Arab states with their pure Islamic ideals. Khamenei therefore became even more convinced that Iran was the last bastion against a regional order manipulated by the West. Religion and geopolitical competition seemed to paint a gloomy picture, but that was not the whole reason why Iran and Israel became mortal enemies. The biggest fear of the Israelis is not on the border of Lebanon or Syria but deep inside Iran, so nuclear facilities are operating day and night. Israel has never officially announced that it possesses nuclear weapons, But experts all know that they are the only country in the Middle East that has this type of weapon of mass destruction. This is what helps Tel Aviv maintain its almost absolute deterrence in the Middle East for decades. However, if one day Iran possesses a nuclear bomb, the balance of power in the region will be completely broken. Not only the existence of Israel but also the entire strategic deterrence system of the West in the Middle East will be threatened, and for Khamenei, the development of nuclear energy is sovereignty, national pride, and also an affirmation that Iran will not surrender to the West. Khamenei also affirmed that his nuclear program is for civilian purposes to develop energy and medicine. Of course, Netanyahu does not believe it. Khamenei constantly demands to wipe Israel off the map, making him increasingly certain that if Iran has a bomb, they will use it. Netanyahu did not declare war but acted quietly. Since 2010, a series of Iranian nuclear scientists have been assassinated one after another, but the deaths were elaborately staged with the intervention of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency. Notably, in 2015, Iran and the P5+1 group reached a nuclear agreement, under which Iran agreed to limit uranium enrichment activities and allow inspections by international atomic energy agencies in exchange for Iran to partially lift strict economic sanctions. However, in 2018, President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from the agreement, causing Iran to gradually resume nuclear activities. Netanyahu considered this move a sign of Iran's bottomless ambition in developing nuclear weapons. Therefore, on January 31, 2018, about 20 Mossad agents broke into Iran's top-secret nuclear document archive. They disabled the alarm system, broke the safe door, and took away about half a ton of top-secret documents. Meanwhile, Khamenei still asserts that the nuclear program is entirely for civilian purposes. He declared that if Iran wanted to, it could have produced an atomic bomb a long time ago, but we did not do so because it was against Islamic morality. However, that statement was not enough to erase the special doubts, when the IAEA continuously released reports showing that Iran was enriching uranium at a much higher level than countries that do not possess nuclear weapons. In June 2025, tensions continued to flare up. Many of Iran's nuclear facilities were attacked simultaneously. In this campaign, Israel announced that it had eliminated 9 of Iran's top scientists. Although it did not destroy the entire nuclear program by force, Netanyahu believed that military pressure could force Iran to make concessions. At the same time, the cyber war and sabotage campaigns continue silently. Khamenei announced that Tehran would not give up uranium enrichment. In the face of escalating tensions, Iran announced that the IAEA had concluded that there was no evidence that Iran was operating an organized nuclear weapons program. However, they also warned that Iran's refusal to monitor and declare highly enriched uranium and secret activities at sensitive locations were very worrying. Those actions have deepened suspicions, making people question whether there is any hope for a reconciliation between these two sworn enemies. Is it possible that one day the flag of Israel will fly next to Iran in a peace conference, or at least the two sides can look at each other without calculation? Many people have asked that question, but most of the answers are usually no. Let's consider a hypothetical article. This is the biggest wish of the West for many decades, but reality shows the opposite. After more than 40 years, things have not changed. If there is no major internal event such as a revolutionary crisis, this hypothesis is almost impossible. There are also some people who think that if the conflict between Israel and Palestine is resolved, Iran's anti-Israel motive will disappear, but Palestine is not really that important. This conflict is just an excuse for Iran to maintain its influence and position itself as an Islamic resistance fighter. Even without the Israel-Palestine conflict, Iran will still fight against Israel at all costs because of Islamic doctrine. As for Israel, their ambitions have grown so large that there are almost no prospects for a long-term peace agreement with Palestine. From there, people have also put forward more realistic hypotheses. That is, Israel and Iran can enter a state of cold peace, not talking, but also not firing when the cost of war is too great, trade benefits and international ties are strong enough. Then everything will be contained. In fact, in the 1980s, when Iran was openly calling Israel an enemy, the two countries were secretly cooperating with the support of the United States. Israel sold weapons to Iran in the war with Iraq. This is the scenario that many Gulf countries are pursuing. In the end, the question should be changed to whether they can reconcile, because this is not only a power struggle, but also a structural and ideological conflict. One side exists based on opposing the other side. In such conflicts, reconciliation is not an agreement but a revolution in thinking. But that is something that no one is ready to do.